So today we'll talk about Kamal2, and if you don't know what is Kamal, Kamal is a Docker orchestration tool. I hope that you are already familiar with the first version at least, and because it will make you to understand everything I will talk about a lot more easier. But still, let me just again quick introduce myself. I am on Rails since 2009, so almost 15 years. And I'm CTO of co-founder of JetRockets. And yes, I am early committer of Kamal. It happened, like Kamal started to me in the beginning of 2023, right after the first couple of releases that were made. I started to commit to Kamal accidentally because I wanted to try to use it inside of our company, because we were looking for a tool that will allow us to deploy, again, anything everywhere, because we have a lot of projects and they all are deployed to different systems. And like for me, it was very hard to keep an eye on both like GCP, AWS, DigitalOcean, and to make myself familiar with all the technologies on these like network providers. Yes. So I was looking for a tool that will allow me to like use it like Capistrano in like as it was in good old times, but to be a tool for containers. So this is how I started using not actually Kamal, but MRSK, whatever it was pronounced these days. You know, MRSK was renamed to Kamal. And yes, I'm a Docker captain. I use Docker for a long period of time. Docker captain is a program that allows you to participate in Docker community more actively. And it was introduced a couple of years ago. I started to participate this year. So I hope that my experience with Kamal will help me to make people more familiar in Ruby community and Rails community with Docker. Anyway, let's move forward. It will not be a deployment guide. It will not be an upgrade guide about how you can upgrade to Kamal2, but instead of this, I wanted to deep dive with you into Kamal and how it works, into the reasons it was created, and into the changes of this fresh Kamal2 release. So before we will go forward, I wanted to like show you some numbers. So in the release that in the first release where I participated, it was 0.14. There were about like 9,000 lines of code, including tests. So the whole repository was about 9,000 lines of code. And then in Kamal 1.9, it was almost 14,000. And now in Kamal 2.3, there are 15,500 lines of code. So we did a big job. The amount of code almost doubled. The amount of features, the number of features that we have in Kamal almost doubled. And the community is growing really fast. So what I wanted you to understand by showing these numbers that Kamal is not finished yet. We're actively doing a lot of changes, and every new release compared to like Rails 8 release, I checked Rails 8 release notes a couple of minutes ago, and to be honest, there are not so much new features in Rails 8. But every Kamal release, it gets new features. It allows you to create new things, not create new things, but to like enable new things in new deployments. So check it out. Every release, I'm sure you will be excited with a list of changes, with the amount of changes that we do. So let's go back to the initial idea that David had with Kamal. So what is the postulate? What is the original postulate of the Kamal? As I told you, it should be a Capistrano for containers. So what does it mean? if you will try to remember what Capistrano did like 15 years ago, then there are three things that you will remember. So first of all, our releases with Kamal and with Capistrano should be zero downtime releases. Yes, we don't want our users to see these four pages or whatever other pages. They should not even know that something has been released, except the fact that they will like see new features of your project of your product. This tool and like Kamal should be imperative, and this is a thing that we will talk a lot during this talk, and it should be fast. Let's try to understand what each of these points, what each of this idea mean. So zero downtime. If you used Capistrano, then probably you used it. It highly depends on what application server you used with Capistrano, but with Puma, you probably use something like phased restart or whatever it was called. So what it did when you deployed a new release, it shut it down your Puma workers one by one, and at the same time it started new workers. So your users, as I told before, your users didn't understand that something has been released because they didn't see this for pages. So this approach will not work with Docker. Yeah, we understand that once we shut it down, our Docker container, like everything goes down. And so what we should do, we should somehow start new container, replace our routing rules to this new container, and only after this we can shut down the existing container. This is something that, like, this is the approach have all the systems like AWS, ECS, and other software platform as a service to work. Imperative. When I said that this tool should be imperative, this means that we should, when we run some command, we should wait until this command is finished. So we don't change the final configuration of the system, but instead we do like command by command and change the current state of the system. So Kubernetes and Docker Swarm or whatever other systems on the market, they are more declarative. You're suggesting that you want to reach the final configuration. So you're saying that there's a container and it has like labels, and I don't care about what you will do, how you will route the traffic, but finally, I want this traffic to be routed to this container. This is how Traefik works, for example, yes? But in Rails world, we are in a bit different state of mind. Instead of like configuring the final configuration of the system, and this is how we did with Capistrano, we want to say that I want to now just to deploy this container. Now, the second thing that I want to do, I want part of this traffic to be routed to this container, but I don't want to do anything without the existing container. And we do it line by line, command by command. And before Kamal, there was no tool on the market that was like truly imperative tool. So the last thing is the speed of how this tool should work, yes. And David originally wanted Kamal to be like fast, not like AWS Beanstalk. You know, AWS Beanstalk, like you can have a couple of cups of tea before your release will go to production when using Beanstalk. And building Docker image may also take a lot of time, yes, because you should build, you should push, and you should pull. So we should be as fast as possible in a part of the deployment process where it can be it can be fast. Yes. So some things like building assets, they just take a lot of time. You cannot do anything with it, but where you can, you should not wait. You should not lose your time, lose the seconds to build a deploy. You should be as fast as possible. And keeping all these things in mind that I just talked about, let's take a look at kamal-2 changes. So the biggest thing that changed is that Traefik was replaced with kamal-proxy. And I remember there were a lot of discussions in Twitter and X, like in August of this year, or even in July of this year, before the actual release of kamal-2. And people like tweeted something that I'm already using kamal-2 in production. They used a version from the main branch. And I replied several times that no, guys, you're not using kamal-2 because you're still relying on Traefik. And the biggest change that had been scheduled for kamal-2 was introducing this new proxy server that is called kamal-proxy. So as I told you a couple of minutes ago, Traefik is declarative. So what does it mean? We don't make changes. We declare the final state. And here is actually an example from Kamal. And on line 13, you see that we started this process, this class that is called Polar. And so after we run our container, we start to poll Docker and fetching the state of the container and wait while it's healthy. So if you deployed something with kamal-1, in the log of the deployment, you probably saw a lot of strings like waiting for container, not strings, but messages, like waiting for container to become healthy. And again, waiting for container to become healthy, because there were no other way to do it. And this is the place where we lost a lot of, not a lot, but we lost quite a lot of time. So what else was with Traefik? Labels could be hard to understand. So this is an example from one of my deployment configurations. And if you know what is going on here, then at least you can read it, yes. But if you see it for the first time, it may be complex to understand. So Traefik, the way you configure, there are multiple ways you can configure Traefik. But the way it worked in kamal-1, it worked with this label configuration. Labels are immutable in containers. So once you apply these labels to container, you cannot change them, yes? And it's it caused a lot of problems when you try to configure it, when you try to make changes you wanted to make, you failed. And then you had to start from the beginning. You cannot change the containers, yes, modify the containers. So in this example, what was going on, there was a container with a web application, and I wanted to implement redirect from VVV version to non-VVV version. And besides this, I want Traefik to compress my responses, and there was also default retry middleware. So again, when you know what is going on here, you at least can read it. But when you first time see this long configuration strings, long configuration parameters in your YAML file, it looks something not very easy to understand, yes? So what else? Kamal was used for something that it was not designed for. So at least in these examples, you see again production, a part of the production configuration file that implemented HTTPS. Yes, so originally Kamal wasn't designed to handle these things, but since Traefik can handle it, a lot of developers try to do it. And the last thing is that Traefik is general purpose proxy server. Yes, and it has a lot of it has its own domain language that you should be familiar with. So it has entry points, it has routers, it has services, but you basically don't want to deal with this stuff. You just want your application to be deployed and your traffic to be routed to this application. And again, it works well when you deploy something small, but once you have like multiple applications on a single host, once you have like multiple configurations that you want to deal with, it like usually like breaks your mind and makes things very complex. Now let's see how the deployment worked with Kamal-1. So let's imagine we have a host machine that has Docker, has Traefik on it, and has two applications. And I show this example with two applications, despite the fact that a lot of people, I don't know for what reason, were thinking that Kamal-1 cannot be used for deploy multiple apps on a single host. It could be. So we have two applications, Foo and Bar, and we have Traefik, and Traefik container routes our traffic to both of these two applications based on a host rule. So here is Kamal-1, and imagine we wanted to deploy a new version of Foo application. So what happened here? Kamal-1 started a new container by running docker run, and it also tied the cart. So tying the cart is not like a typical application, and it's not a part of Docker domain language. It's not a part of it. It actually was a feature that was implemented by the Kamal team, and I will explain later what it was. But we started with let's just understand that this all started with running new container with Docker run. So what is the core? So the thing is that, as I told you before, Docker labels are immutable. So we couldn't like change the state, change the configuration of the container on the fly. But we needed a way to shut down containers correctly, not just like stopping them, but telling Traefik to stop routing traffic to this container, yes? To stop routing requests to this container. So, and what we implemented, we implemented not a technology, an approach that we called court files. So we modified a health command, health check for the container. So the developer, like you, said that the health check should be a GET request for like /health, yes? Instead of providing this health check as a health check for container, we provided this string that you see on your screen. So our health check was, first of all, it was a request to an actual health check, but besides, we assured that there is a file called court in the container. Yes, that it exists. And everything worked well. Once you wanted to shut down, to stop routing requests to your container, you just deleted the file, and container went to unhealthy state. And once the container went to unhealthy state, Traefik understood that it should stop routing requests to this container. So it was a like workaround. It was a way we told Traefik to stop routing requests without breaking all the system. Yes. So we waited until the container will go to the healthy state by polling Docker with the requests. And once it went to the healthy state, Traefik automatically switched his routing to and started to route requests to this container. An old container is still also accepts the request. So we started to route requests to both containers. Yes. At the same time, we started additional containers with your Sidekick or whatever you have to process your background jobs. As soon as Sidekick is up, we cut the court. We like removed this court file from the container went to unhealthy state. And once the container is unhealthy, Traefik understood that it should stop routing requests to this container. And yeah, you see that requests are not routed to an old container. And we could use Docker stop to remove these containers and prune the all images and clean everything after the deployment. So what problems this approach had? First of all, as I told you, container labels are immutable. And there was no other way to tell Traefik to stop routing requests. Yes, and we implemented this court files approach for this. Again, it was a workaround. So on this schema, on the slides that I showed you, we never told anything to Traefik directly because Traefik is declarative. Instead of this, we modified the environment that Traefik has, yes, and it changed its state automatically. And besides all this, since again Traefik is declarative, there is no way to make sure that container is up and running. We did polling of the containers. So now let's see how this example, the same process, works with Camel-2. Again, at the beginning, we have two applications running on the same host, foo and var, and we want a Camel-2 to deploy the new version of the application. So what happens? Again, we do Docker run. Everything here is the same, but we don't mess with these court files. So we do just Docker run normally as just a normal Docker command. The result of this command is the container ID that we get after the container starts to run. And here is what happens now. Instead of dealing with this workaround that we had with Traefik, we run another command with kamal-proxy. And this is very this is an imperative way of doing things. And this is the way we Ruby on Rails developers, it's a common way for us. We tell kamal-proxy that here is a new container, and you should start routing traffic to this new container. This is exactly the command that is executed in kamal-proxy container. Kamal-proxy deploy the name of the application, foo in our case, and the target is a container where the traffic should be routed now. So what happens next? Kamal-proxy waits until the container will become healthy. And once it's healthy, it immediately switches all the traffic to this new container. We don't, in Kamal now, we don't deal with all the rules how the traffic should be routed. We don't wait for, we don't pulse the state of the Docker. This all is handled in kamal-proxy. After this, we run Docker run command for all other applications, all the other containers that should be deployed. And once they're deployed, we run Docker stop and remove the old version. So this schema is much simpler compared to what we had in Kamal-1 with Traefik. So no court files, only imperative commands that are mapped with Kamal, and no polling of containers for status. Besides this, what changed? Let's encrypt. Yes, one of the biggest discussion of Kamal-1 was how to implement SSL with Kamal and Traefik. There were a lot of this discussion on GitHub had about 50 something comments, and if you will Google now Traefik Kamal SSL, there will be a lot of results. A lot of developers implemented their ways to do it, found their ways to do it. So let's encrypt with kamal-proxy is simple as it should be. You just say that you want to use SSL, and if your host exposes 443 port, then everything is done automatically. You don't deal with you don't deal with SSL encryption. Thruster. So Thruster is another like big change in Rails ecosystem, and actually before Kamal 2 was released, before we get to know that there will be dedicated server called kamal-proxy. Actually, it was named Parachute before summer, I believe. So before we get to know that kamal-proxy will exist, a lot of people were thinking that Thruster is actually replacement for Traefik. No, it's not a replacement. You know that in Rails 7.2 and Rails 8, there is like solid trifecta, yes, solid cache, solid queue, solid cable. I think that Kamal2, kamal-proxy, and Thruster is another like Rails trifecta, and first of all, two of these things are written in Go, like Thruster and kamal-proxy are written in Go. So this is an example how two different languages can do great things together. I'm talking about Ruby and Go. But also these things, and you will, I hope you will understand a bit later, they like working great together. So let's try to remember what we had like before the initial Kamal release and have things worked in Rails. Yes. So usually, at least this is what I had. I had an Nginx in my Rails configuration. Yes, as a Rails as a web server. So what was the responsibilities of Nginx? So it handled HTTP requests, it served static files, and it was also responsible for caching and for compression, rate limits, and like a bunch of other stuff. And usually I had a couple of Rails processes on my host machine. They were looking, they were started from the Rails root, and also Nginx was configured to look for files in Rails root. Yes, if I had to serve JavaScript or CSS file or an image from the Rails root, Nginx was responsible to do it. Yes, so every request that could be served without Rails were served without Rails. So things changed a lot with Kamal. With Kamal 1 release, we didn't have Nginx anymore in like default configuration of how we serve requests. And before Kamal 2, it was unclear, and before actually Thruster release, it was unclear like who should be responsible for all this stuff. kamal-proxy and actually Traefik in Kamal 1 release was responsible to handle HTTP requests and HTTPS requests too. Puma in Kamal 1 schemas, Puma was responsible for serving static files, for rate limiting. If you don't configure a rate limit in Traefik, which can be like quite difficult, quite weird to understand how it can be done. So, but still, who should be responsible for caching and compression? Again, with Traefik, it could be configured in Traefik, but with Thruster release, this is what Thruster now do. So first of all, what is Thruster? It's Go wrapper around Puma. Maybe in future it will support some other application servers. I don't know, but for now, let's say it's Go wrapper around Puma. It is distributed as a gem. You don't need to deal with any Go packaging system. You just do gem install as you usually do. It's very easy to run. You run like bin Thrust, bin Rails server, and you are good to go. And what it handles is, first of all, when you run your application with Thruster, it allows you to serve static files efficiently. It allows you to do caching of the static assets and to compress them. So now, coming back to this slide, now kamal-proxy is responsible for HTTP requests. Puma is responsible only for handling your Rails requests, and everything else, server static files, caching, compression, goes to Thruster. Finally, I prepared some best practices based on my experience of using Kamal, using Thruster, using kamal-proxy. And you can actually use your phones to go to follow the URLs in these QR codes. So first of all, you should harden your instance. And yes, there were a lot of discussions in the internet that Kamal setup only installs Docker if it is missing and it does nothing else. And no fail to ban, no firewall. Yes, but Kamal is not a server automation system. Yes, it's a deployment tool. It should not care about how secure is your server, but still, you should always harden your servers and don't forget to do it. So it hardly depends on automation that you use to provision your changes. I use Ansible, and there are great Ansible collections and that includes great approaches of hardening. I use this Ansible collection hardening repository to do it. So just don't forget to do it. Please don't think that if things are very easy in the guide, in the Kamal guide particularly, you're done completely. No, you should always remember that security is something you should care about. So the next thing is keep your Docker registry close to the host, as close as possible, of course. So Kamal needs Docker registry, at least for now. So there are ideas how we can get rid of the registry. It will allow a lot of changes to be done, because the idea of Docker is that you have original view of Docker is that if you want to distribute your images, you should have a registry. I will speak about this a bit more later, but for now, we should have a registry. There is no way to use Kamal without it. So every deploy, once you run Kamal deploy, every deploy requires you to build an image, to push an image, then to pull an image. So quite a lot of traffic will be transferred between the hosts where you do build and the host where you actually run your application. A lot of registries now exist, like Hub registry, Docker Hub, ECR, Digital Ocean Container Registry. You should choose something that will be as close to your host machine as possible, yes? One of the reasons to do it, so the first reason is that it will be deployment process will be faster. Another reason is that you will not pay, or you will pay less for traffic. Yes, traffic costs money, unfortunately. And once you do your deploy, as I said, a lot of traffic will be generated. Yes. So the next part is actually maybe what I suggest to do is completely different from what 37 Signals and DHH suggest to do. I use Kamal as a part of my continuous delivery project. I don't use it directly from my laptop. Yes, I use it from GitHub Actions usually, or from GitLab CI. And Kamal integrates beautifully with any CI/CD platform compared to Capistrano. Kamal, you don't need to find workarounds to use it inside of your CD platform. Yes, I created a repository with examples of GitHub Actions that can be used with Kamal. So maybe the only way I use it manually on my laptop is to start Rails console, to deploy small changes to accessories. Everything else I try to automate. And actually, it helps me a lot to, especially in a things when there are distributed teams. I don't want to care about everybody understands completely how things work. I just wanted them to push the release to the branch or to publish it with a tag, and then the release comes to the release is deployed. And the last one I wanted to say, just follow the dry principle everywhere. Dry is like part of the Ruby world, and I want you to follow it even if when you deal with deployment stuff. So what I'm talking about is that you don't need to reinvent the bicycle. Yes, there are things that can be used in your deployment actions, in your deployment workflows, use them. Don't create them from scratch. There are a bunch of stuff on GitHub Market that can be used without knowing how it works under the hood. Yes, like there are stuff to set up Ruby, to set up SSH agents. The same now exists for Kamal. I created the section because I don't want to copy things manually from repository to repository. For me, it's much better to say that I want to use this standardized Kamal action, Kamal workflow, and I'm done. The last thing to talk about in Kamal 2 is what can be improved, despite the fact that Kamal 2 is a huge release and it changes things a lot. In Kamal world, there's still like a place for improvement. So the first thing is that, yes, I told this already, every deploy requires a registry, a container registry to exist. There are ideas how we can get rid of registry. Docker save command exists and it allows you to save your image as an archive. Then you can like try to transfer this image over SSH and install it locally once it transferred to the host machine. So there's still discussions in Kamal ecosystem whether we should do it or not. But even if it will be implemented, if the deployment without registry will be implemented, first of all, we will lose cache, because now build cache is also stored in the registry. What it means, it will make your Docker build slower, and probably it's suitable for some small projects, but I don't believe it's suitable for like big projects. Yes. So yes, a lot of people don't like registries, and first of all, you should pay for registry. You don't use them like they were designed, because originally registries were designed for reusable images. Yes, we don't, if we don't want to build something, we can fetch it from registry, start this image, use this container. With Kamal, it doesn't work this way. Every time you deploy something, you build image, push image, then pull this new image. But still, this is what it is. At least for now, we cannot do deployment without registries. Accessories deployment. This is quite interesting thing. With Kamal 1, you could deploy accessories to publish them on web. An example of this accessory, like PG Hero. PG Hero has a web interface, beautiful web interface, that allows you to like understand quickly what is going on with your Postgres instance. Yes, and it was possible with kamal-1 because of the Traefik, by the way. You could deploy an accessory and publish it web interface with Traefik. In kamal-2, it's not possible. You will ask me why, because, and I will tell you, because 37 Signals team wants to keep everything as simple as possible. And since not all accessories need this, they just said, well, we will not implement it. Yeah. I don't agree with this. I think that accessories should be published. And yes, there are workarounds. You can configure accessory to be deployed as a separate application, and it will work. But again, it seems like a workaround. So I'm asking you if you have time, please open this pull request on a GitHub and vote it to be merged to master. So Donald already said that he will, as soon as he will have time, he will try to understand what is going on here and try to, maybe it will be merged. So I'm asking you to help here. I guess that's all. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm now ready to answer.
Thank you. That was enjoyed that very much, getting into the weeds of these changes, and it's going to motivate me to dig deeper. Trying to do some research while during your talk. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's open it up to questions. Anyone have questions? Grigor, please just speak up or raise your hand. I was while we're waiting for anybody who wants to share, I was looking around for like the registry issue, and I found like some people are working on this problem. I guess trying to find the link. I was looking at so many things.
There was a link in discussions for Kamal.
This was like a developer who had come up with an I guess a self-hosted registry option. Have you looked into that?
Even the self-hosted registry option, you still need registry. So the idea is that the thing, it goes from the fact that with Capistrano we didn't have anything additionally to deploy our app. Yes, we only had the source code and the server and the Capistrano that we run locally. So a lot of developers want, and I actually also want a way to do it with Kamal, because again, for me, it makes sense to have registry when you have a reusable images. Yes, it makes sense. If you don't have a reusable images, and with Kamal, actually you usually, in 99% of cases, you don't have reusable images, because the only case when you will reuse your image is when you will start a new server or you will restart your instance. Yes, in this case, yes, you will reuse your image that has been built. But even in this case, your image will already be on the server if you restart it. You will not have to fetch it from the repository.
I see. So you're saying there's really no, other than just doing this transfer, that's the only reason you need the registry to exist. It's a way station to get the built image into your server.
Yes.
And
yes.
So that's the thing that's being, is that an active, is that actively being developed to eliminate the registry requirements?
Yes.
Any predictions?
Yes, this is something
like a version 3, or is that a version?
Yeah, I think it will some. So this is, first of all, this is a very big change, and I'm not sure that it will work for all the cases, because as I told you, there are like a lot of cases can exist where you still need it. Like if you provision a new server, you need it. If you deal with like scalability, you need a registry to be able to
Spin up another.
to fetch the image to the new instance. Yes, and
Right.
I don't think there are ways to eliminate this. But at the same time, there are a lot of applications that don't need this step. Yes, and first of all, you don't need to pay for your registry as a developer, and you don't need to transfer your image to the registries, then to the host machine. You can like build and transfer your image directly to the host machine, and this will again save some time for you. So probably it will be a part of 2 point something release, at least with some limited functionality. So let's just wait and see how it goes.
Jesse has a question.
Hey there. I had two questions actually. The first was just a clarification. We were talking about the registry right now. So just to confirm, like when you do a deploy, does the Docker build happen at deploy time every time? So
Yes.
like, so you just like you hit Kamal deploy or whatever, and it builds locally and then push it to the registry and then does the deployment?
So you can use kamal start, kamal upstart, and it will eliminate the build process. It will fetch the last image and try to start it on your configured host. But if you usually do kamal deploy, then yes, deploy happens every time.
So Kamal start would just be like you need to bounce the app servers effectively. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question that you didn't touch on is, can you talk a little bit about high availability with Kamal deployments?
High availability.
Well, just like, how like the idea behind, Kamal is, I know that you can deploy to multiple, like to multiple servers and whatnot. I assume that if you want to have some sort of like failover or whatnot, you would need to, there's no sort of part of the trifecta you were talking about that sits in front of Kamal.
In front of all instances.
Right. To like if one of the if you're on a virtual machine or on a physical box, if that machine goes down, you still need a layer. It sounds like that would be a load balancer or something else to make sure that whatever is running on kamal-proxy is actually still there on the internet.
That's a very good question. So first of all, you're right that currently in like this trifecta of Rails 8, Rails 7 something, and 8, there is no solution. There's no built-in solution that will handle the situations. And I'm not sure that this solution will exist anywhere in future releases, because this is the more part of your infrastructure. For me, most of my projects are still on AWS and DigitalOcean, and both of these platform has balancers as a part of the platform. Yes, and these balancers allow me to, first of all, to route traffic based on what hosts are currently up. At the same time, I understand that a lot of developers start to use again bare metal servers now, and there should be a way to implement the similar solution on bare metal server. I believe this can be done with like maybe with Nginx or something. So Rails does not care about this, and I'm not sure that it will care.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I was mostly just sort of thinking about best practices at this point, with Kamal being sort of you relatively new in terms of a deployment strategy, just thinking about what best practices are. And at this point, it sounds like the best practices are, use whatever your chosen provider is. That doesn't change. What changes is sort of what goes on under the hood, where you don't have to worry about things like, deploying using Kubernetes or whatever else is going on.
Yes. So it highly depends from the platform. Another, actually, if we're talking about this kind of things, another thing that maybe required by the community is an ability to create dedicated instances per branch, yes, per feature. If you deal with a lot of changes, and if you're familiar with like how Heroku works, in Heroku you are able to deploy your branch to dedicated instance, dedicated environments that will only include this branch, and you will not deal with like merging your changes somewhere. Kamal does not allow you to do it out of the box, and I'm not sure again that it will allow to do it like directly, but I can say that we implemented like very similar approach internally now in one of our projects. We use we don't use any additional dashboard to track this. We're actually using GitHub pull requests and labels on these pull requests, and we have a bot that is installed on these projects on GitHub. And once you open pull request, you're able to tell this bot to deploy your changes to dedicated instance. We create an infrastructure, and then we like dynamically change Kamal configuration, and Kamal deploys this to this instance. So this is something that may exist, like both the questions that you asked and the features that I just described. I believe it can exist on the top of the Kamal. Yes, it should not be part of the Kamal, but this may exist on the top of the Kamal as a part of the ecosystem. And I'm sure that in upcoming year there will be a lot of projects that use Kamal under the hood and do like this kind of stuff, very developer friendly, very easy to understand stuff to like expand number of use cases for Kamal and number of use cases for Rails.
Got it. Thank you.
How much of your time do you spend working on Kamal, Igor?
It depends on my. So first of all, I do it on my. I don't dedicate like an hour, 2 hours per week, per day, per month. It depends on how much things I have to do on my full-time job. Yes, in my business. I don't spend like a lot of time, but I'm more like if I face any issue, I try to solve it. I don't try to find workarounds. Yes, I try to solve it. So my first commit to Kamal was I implemented a build cache support for Kamal. Yes, so I started using MRSK, and I understood that it takes like a lot of time to build an image. Yes. The reason why it worked this way because MRSK didn't support Docker build cache these times, and it was very easy to be a part of to start being a part of Kamal community. I just implemented Docker build cache support. It didn't took me like a lot of time, and I become a committer of Kamal. And at the same time, I like solved my personal problem. Yes, my builds become like quite faster. So I don't do it like I don't dedicate time each week, but every time I face an issue, I try to find a solution to it.
It's written in Ruby, the whole thing? Or is it?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm looking at the repo
Except to kamal-proxy. Kamal-proxy is written in Go. Yes, and thruster is also written in Go. Everything else is written in Ruby. And
So
it's actually a great example of using Ruby not only as Rails, yes, because usually when we say we build something in Ruby, this means that we build something in Rails. So Kamal is an example that Ruby can be used to even build CLI applications, CLI tools.
go for it, Jesse, please.
I have one other question, which is I was curious if you know at all why kamal-proxy was written on its own versus like using something off the shelf like Caddy or one of the other. I know obviously Traefik was replaced, but I've used Caddy in the past, and it seemed like a lot of the kamal-proxy stuff was very similar to what's already in place in Caddy.
So the reason is because so first of all, the idea of creating kamal-proxy, it didn't exist from the beginning of the Kamal, yes. So this is something that 37 Signals team faced while we were fixing all the issues with Traefik, because at the beginning of in the initial Kamal 1.0 release, all the things that I showed in my presentation, the scored files and blah blah blah, they didn't exist. We were thinking that it's very easy to implement deployment without all this like workarounds. But we faced the issue one by one, and each new issue of using Traefik, we were on our way to understand that we need something that will integrate seamlessly with Kamal. First of all, speaking of the interface, now kamal-proxy, it replicates an interface of Kamal like directly. When you say Kamal deploy, it calls kamal-proxy deploy. When you say Kamal app stop, it really calls the same command on kamal-proxy, and that helps to simplify things a lot. If you will open the source code of Kamal and look at the parts that like actually boots an application and stops an application and compare it 1.9 version with 2.0 version, you will see that 2.0 is like much simpler because we don't need to care about how containers will be replaced in the Kamal. This is done in kamal-proxy. So this was the main reason.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Cool, thanks.
And by the way, kamal-proxy, like it's about 2 times smaller as a container compared to Traefik. Of course, not because 37 Signals is so good in writing Go, no, but because the number of features that a kamal-proxy has is smaller compared to number of features that has Traefik.
Right, because it doesn't have to be a generalized tool.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Is anyone here using Kamal, in their day-to-day? Be interested to know. No, Andrew, who can't be with us tonight, who's traveling, one of the hosts of this meetup, he loves using it. He wants to stay there with applications that he can put in Kamal.
I tried using it, but wasn't successful with it. So I'm a beginner, so that's probably part of the answer. But I tried a few times, and after a while, I just put Git on the server.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, you can just be too busy, right, to take on something new. I think I started digging into it a bit with the first meetup we had for Kamal version 1. I think I'm remotivated now to jump back in. And I just bought a book on it before this meetup. I want to try to work through some examples and stuff like that. The documentation looks really awesome. It's
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it's really well done. So
Is there the question? There's a question in the chat. Would you say Kamal would be a good way for someone to dive into Docker and Kubernetes? Like, this is a very good question. This is a very good question. I can say that currently Kamal has nothing. Again, usually you don't need to deal with Kubernetes at all when using Kamal. Kubernetes at all. Speaking about Docker, I believe that you can start using Kamal without even knowing how Docker works. Because again, and yes, this all applies if you don't have a tech debt, if you're dealing with a relatively new application, like coming to the Rails roots, you can create a block in 15 minutes, yes, with comments, with blog posts and everything else, and deploy the block to a bare metal server with Kamal. You will be able to do this without knowing how Docker works. At the same time, if you have like a major application that has a lot of configuration options inside of Nginx config file or whatever else, wherever else, of course, you will not be able to deploy it, yes, because you don't know how Docker works. You don't know like what is container, what is image, what is container registry, what are volumes, what is container lifecycle, and a lot of other things. So it highly depends on what is your final goal. If you wanted to like feel yourself like an indie hacker that can create something and immediately deploy it somewhere, yes, it's possible with Kamal without knowing how Docker works. If you have like some big stuff, I think it's better to understand Docker in depth and only then start using Kamal.
So I have enough Docker knowledge to be dangerous, find my way around. How detailed do you think you need to understand Docker to be,
at least you should be familiar with what is container, with what is image, what is container lifecycle, and all that stuff.
Jesse, go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry to keep monopolizing all the question time. I wanted to confirm one thing that I remember from Kamal 1 that was sort of a turnoff. I believe it's been addressed in Kamal 2 about deploying multiple applications on the same servers. So A, is that my understanding correct? And B, is that proxying also handled by kamal-proxy?
Yes. Yes.
And do the applications need to know about each other?
That's a very good question. Let's come back to my presentation and I will show you something. So I will share my screen again. Do you see my screen now?
Okay, here it comes. So a little delay.
So here is an example of a command that actually is executed with kamal-proxy. So we tell kamal-proxy to deploy our full application, and the target for this full application is a new container. So this is how deployments are handled now. And if you will deploy like bar application, you will execute the same command except to the application name. So you will say the kamal-proxy deploy bar, and target will be an ID of the container that has a bar application. So this is the answer of how now Kamal deals with multiple applications on the same host. Actually, the same was with Kamal 1, but the problem that, again, configuration of Kamal 1 was handled with labels. Yes, right. And it was a bit tricky. It was a bit tricky to keep everything in several repositories. When I say everything, I mean this stuff, and make this repositories synchronized with each other, at least in this label configuration part. Yes. So Kamal 2 makes it easier because you don't need to deal with labels.
Right.
But at the same time, you should understand very clearly that kamal-proxy configuration will be the same for multiple applications, yes? And if you will change kamal-proxy configuration in one application, it will change it globally for all applications on this host.
Got it. But
No
the-
magic here.
But the individual, like if I have the foo application, I deploy to the config, and then I deploy the bar application. Does bar need to know that foo is also running on the same server?
No.
Okay.
No.
But
It doesn't
the
need to
Kamal
know.
proxy, but the Kamal proxy configuration,
kamal-proxy.
which sort of implicitly was updated by the deployment of foo and bar, will be updated.
Yeah. Because you pass an application name here.
Right.
Yes. So you explicitly saying that you're now deploying foo, and you should route all requests that that should be handled by foo to this new container, to this new target.
Right. And can you deploy a pre-built image from a registry, or do you have to build and then push?
Now you have to build and push.
Okay. So if there's already something published that is able to serve traffic, you still have to do something.
This is what it is now.
Got it.
But
thank you.
You should always remember, again, this situation when you handle multiple apps on the same host. You should always remember that I told this, that once you do changes for like in a full repository, and these changes are about kamal-proxy, and you apply these changes, they will also be applied to all the applications on this host, even if you and your bar application will know nothing about it. Yes. So it is the same happened when we had Nginx or Apache or whatever, and our web server handled multiple hosts. Yes, each of these hosts doesn't know what happens on the on another host, and we were like okay with this. The same goes with the same situation now goes with kamal-proxy, and actually the same was if we will take a look at this slide, it was possible to have multiple applications with Traefik, but you had to deal with these labels separately in each repository, and it was a bit tricky. So this is the part that kamal-proxy does now. You don't need to deal with labels.
But just Anton, you please take next. But just really quick, in the context of what this conversation, yes, it has to rebuild, but that rebuild will be efficient as Docker is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It depends. It depends on like several things. It will be efficient if your Docker file is efficient. It will be efficient if your Docker build cache is enabled. It will be efficient if your assets will not be rebuilt at each build. Yes. So it highly depends on what you have. Like
Right.
there is no silver bullet. You cannot like make sure that every build will be efficient.
Anton, please take it away. Oh, you're muted, sir. Anton, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I never tried Kamal, and I'm a bit concerned that kamal-proxy replaces Nginx. And I wonder how performant it is comparing to Nginx. Probably you can share some metrics.
Okay, so first of all, Nginx is full like it's general purpose web server. Yes, kamal-proxy is not a general purpose web server. It's even not a general proxy. It's not even a general proxy server. Yes, it's very dedicated solution. So I think it's not correct to compare kamal-proxy with Nginx, because the idea with these two software is completely different. It's fine to compare kamal-proxy with Traefik, because Traefik is also a proxy server. And speaking about this comparison, if you will Google, if you will try to Google kamal-proxy compared to Traefik, you will be able to find a tweet from actually a Russian-speaking guy. I follow him in Twitter, and he compared like memory usage and CPU usage for both Traefik and kamal-proxy. And kamal-proxy like goes better compared to Traefik. Again, this only happens because number of features, number of things that kamal-proxy can do is significantly smaller compared to Traefik can do. But speaking of performance, I think it's fine to use kamal-proxy because first of all, it's written in Go. It's battle tested in 37 signals because I know that some of their projects currently use kamal-proxy in production. If they can use it, I think it's fine for us to use it too. We are not a Shopify, let's be honest. Yes, we don't work in Shopify. We don't have Shopify in our repositories. Yes, and we don't have Traefik that has Shopify. We're significantly smaller, speaking of Traefik and speaking of number of requests we have. So I think it's fine to use it. Why not? It already works in production.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, take it away.
So I guess my experience with Kamal so far, I've just been using it mostly for, I don't know, kind of play projects, just stuff that I'm doing locally. And actually I'm hosting it on a Raspberry Pi that sits at my desk, and I'm also doing the registry there. So that's kind of cool to see. You can do remote builds through Kamal using that as well. I guess one question, I guess part of the reason I'm doing it is without having to set up servers and everything for everything I'm working on. It's just super cheap to leave it sitting on my desk all the time and just route through my router port 80 and 443 directly to the Raspberry Pi. And one of the features that was really helpful for me was the Let's Encrypt, where it's done automatically. That way I could deploy an app and have it up, within just a few seconds. But what about the renewals on that? I haven't really seen how that works in the documentation. Does it renew every time you deploy, or is there some background that's working to renew every 3 months or whatever? Or how is that piece?
This is a very good question. So first of all, I don't think that there is anything automated right now, unfortunately. So you have to redeploy your kamal-proxy.
Okay.
And speaking of this, kamal-proxy is not getting redeployed every time you deploy a new version of your application. You have to do this explicitly. You have to run kamal-proxy reboot command, and it will reboot your kamal-proxy instance. The same goes with an upgrading. There are situations when a new version of Kamal, 2-point-something, rely on changes that exist in new version of the proxy. And when you will try to deploy something with Kamal, like 2.3, it will not be able to deploy your image if your previous deploy was done with 2.1, because versions of Kamal proxy are different. In this case, you first of all have to run kamal-proxy reboot command that will reboot kamal-proxy, fetch everything related to kamal-proxy configuration, and it will also fetch renew your Let's Encrypt certificates, and then you will be able to deploy changes with Kamal. So for now, again, I'm not sure because I don't use SSL option like every day. Usually I handle this on my balancers in both DigitalOcean and AWS. But I don't think that any automation now exists.
Okay.
I have a question to show my ignorance, but I want to try to get tuned in a little bit more. So if I want to deploy a test version of my app, what would be best practice? But I want to go through, the same infrastructure. would I just use a different container name and test it out that way? And then when I'm happy, I would basically make redeploy with that code using the production container name. What would be the best way to proceed there?
So if I understood you right, you wanna like deploy like staging or something, yeah?
I have V2 in my code, and I want to test it in the actual infrastructure where production runs. Like, so you call it a staging environment, whatever, but I'm
Whatever, yeah.
I'm
it doesn't matter.
a low low overhead guy. I've got maybe a couple of servers or just one server, and so I just want to make sure everything works before I release that version out to the world.
So first of all, this is a situation which Kamal-2 handles better compared to Kamal-1 because of this multiple apps per host feature that is natively supported by kamal-proxy. So first of all, what you will have to do, you will have to create a deployment configuration file specifically for your environment. Yes, so it will be like deploy staging YAML or deploy something YAML, and you will have to specify destination parameter when you call kamal deploy command. Yes, so it will be kamal deploy -- destination and your destination name, your environment name actually. In your deployment configuration file, this deployment something YAML, you will have your host parameter that will say that you are now deploying not to your whatever.com application, but test whatever.com application. And basically you are done. If you don't have any balancer before your host, if you handle traffic directly with this host, you're done because kamal-proxy will do everything else for you. It will route all the traffic that has specified host to your new container. That's all. This is situations that's what wasn't like clearly handled with Kamal-1. With Kamal-2, it is much simpler to do this.
Okay, cool. I've got to get my hands on this and try it out. I'm gonna refer to this conversation when I do that test. Thank you.
Again, Kamal-2 is still not a silver bullet. There are a lot of situations when you have to like find a solution that will work in your particular configuration, in your particular infrastructure, because a lot of things you have to keep in mind when you deal with network and with traffic routing and all this stuff. It only seems to be very straightforward, very like easy to understand. But once you start like dealing with this, it takes it has a lot of things under the hood. But we're going in a very like in a correct way. Speaking of how we try to deal with infrastructure in the real world, really, I love it.
So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting my first project deployed with Kamal. So it's a really good detailed information. Who else has a question for Igor? So what's it for I guess what do you think is the best way to become like a Kamal, really good at using this tool? Besides listening to people like yourself speak, like, would you just direct us to the documentation, or would you direct us to anything in particular to become proficient in using the tooling?
So I think, first of all, there is a big difference. As I said, there is a big difference of deploying something small and deploying something big with Kamal, and the same differences with deploying something small and big with any other tool. Yes, with Capistrano, it can be also very like very tricky to deploy something big. Yes, because you have to deal about dependencies on your servers and a lot of other stuff. to make sure that they all have the same version of Ruby and things like this. So I think that if you're completely like newbie of how things work in Docker, you don't worry, you don't want to worry about like all this networking stuff. You should go to some cloud solution, like not such complex solution as a AWS, but DigitalOcean is fine because DigitalOcean is a good compromise between bare metal servers like Headster and like big players like AWS or GCP. So you should go to DigitalOcean, start your instance. It doesn't cost a lot. It costs like less than $50 per month. And try to deploy your like, pet project with Kamal to this instance because it is easier compared to deploying to bare metal because again, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff that you will have to worry with bare metal. DigitalOcean has DNS provider inside of the platform. DigitalOcean has container registry provider inside of the platform, and a lot of other things inside of the platform. And you will not have to worry how you will implement this when you have like nothing. Yes.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll take that. I do have a DigitalOcean server. Maybe I'll give that a shot. Go for it, Jesse.
I have another question. Then this one's one about collaboration between developers who are all deploying the same application. How does I know that for deployments on the server, or maybe not, like how do configurations work in terms of multiple people deploying like the same application?
Concurrency when multiple people deploy the same application at the same time, yes?
Not necessarily at the same time. I'm just mostly wondering about, if I'm deploying to, our current AWS solution, or when we were using Heroku, we set all of our environment variables ahead of time on the platform, right? In Heroku, you like configure everything. The environment knows about the environment variables. And then when you deploy on top of this sort of pre-baked thing with my, all my credentials in place. With something like Kamal, where the deployments are initiated from me, like from my laptop, right? And then I do a deployment. Where does that configuration come from? And what's the best practice for making sure that, if I'm deploying and my colleague is deploying, that the same, that I'm not accidentally
the same configuration will be deployed.
Yeah, I'm not deploying my development credentials by accident or whatever else.
So that's a good question. And again, it highly depends on how you use Kamal. I told that I don't use it directly from my laptop. I don't do it, like never, like almost never. Yes, I do it from GitHub Actions. So basically my approach will be very similar to what you currently have on AWS and Heroku. I have some of my secrets are stored in GitHub secrets, and I fetch it while I build my image. Yes, and I then start my image. I push the secrets to my container. This is one approach that can be implemented, and believe me, it will work well, especially if you don't store your secrets in .env files. If you use Rails secrets, it will be very easy for you because like almost everything you will have in GitHub secrets is your Rails master key.
Right.
Everything else will be in the repository, and you will not have to worry about what you are deploying. All your secrets are inside of your application. You only provide a Rails master key to de-encrypt it, and you're done. But see, in 37 Signals, things are a bit different. They use Kamal to deploy like directly from their laptops, and even more. Based on what I heard from David like a week ago, they even get rid of all CI processes in GitHub Actions. They don't do it now. They run tests locally, and yeah, so they're pretty hardcore team. So they run tests locally, and they don't have any test automation now. So how they deal with this? They store their secrets in password managers like 1Password. They use 1Password, but also Kamal supports Bitwarden and some other stuff. You cannot deploy your development credentials to production because production configuration exists in a different deployment file with a different destination. And once you provide destination as a part of your Kamal deploy command, all your secrets are you start fetching your secrets from a dedicated secrets file that exists on the .kamal folder. So it's if you configure it once, it's not technically possible to make a mistake here. If you configure it once, everything correctly, yes. If you have a correct configuration of what you're gonna deploy, then it's not possible to deploy your development credentials to production. But at the same time, the reason why I have everything on GitHub and I have everything automated on GitHub Actions because, let's be honest, 37 Signals is very special team of developers, very highly qualified and efficient team, and so there should be something you rely on when you deal to production. Yes, in some teams it's better to rely on like automation tools like GitHub Actions or something. Other teams are able to rely on people.
But ultimately, it sounds like similar to how in Heroku you store it in Heroku, there is a central store for the configuration, and then it's Kamal's responsibility during the build or during the deployment process on the server to build the environment up, fetch the credentials from whatever that central store is, and then configure itself.
Yeah, it's always a chance to make a mistake. Like again, no silver bullet. You're able to deploy something to production and like break everything. Yes, you can do this. But even with Capistrano, you can do this. Even with Heroku, you can do this. Nobody will stop you if you have required permissions. Yes. But with Kamal, I think if everything is configured correctly, as I said, then the chance of doing this is like very low.
Well, it's just giving you brand new ways of breaking everything.
So with Kamal, can you tell it to run your tests before deployment, or is that a stupid question?
It depends on how you run your tests. So first of all, if you don't have any CI configured, then there are Kamal hooks, and you can run whatever you want before you start deployment. Yes, so you can configure these Kamal hooks to run your tests. If you have GitHub, then like usually before when you call Kamal deploy workflow or whatever else deploy workflow, you will run your lints, your tests, or whatever. You will start all notifications that will notify your team that something goes on with your production server. Yes, and then you will do deploy. Then you will run notifications again. So it highly depends on where how your deployment is automated. In the repositories that I shared in my presentation, there are examples of how this can be done on GitHub Actions, because I'm like, I try to keep everything on GitHub Actions. I don't do anything manually. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I love GitHub Actions, and my context was more, I was just curious how they're doing the 37 signals example. Like, so they're depending on each developer to go through like a testing process before they would run a deployment, or is that regulated, segregate, only certain people can run deployments, or I know that's pretty deep insight. Maybe you don't know all the answers to that. I'm just
I
curious.
don't know. I don't know.
why
I
they
don't know
moved off-
exactly.
why
I don't know
why they did
exactly
this.
how permissions are granted, who can deploy to production, who cannot deploy. But yes, first of all, if you have permissions to run to deploy to production, nobody will stop you from deploying something wrong. Kamal will not stop you, even David will not stop you. You will just run Kamal deploy and you're done. I know 100% that they have like very well-written policies, internal policies in the company. They even cover situations when you travel from one country to another country, you have to do several manipulations with your laptop, with your one password account, and a lot of other stuff. I think similar policies exist for deployment.
No, that's interesting.
And they rely on people. They don't rely on automation platforms like GitHub Actions. Yes, they rely on people in every processes in their company.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Because even the best people can make mistakes, but yeah,
Yes.
it's just very curious. Thank you for that insight. Who else has questions for Igor? I know you've been so generous with us. So so what is it, 4:30 a.m. there now?
Yeah.
So maybe we need to let you get some sleep.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It reminds me times I had 10 years ago, because 10 years ago I had clients both in Asia and in New York, and until like 2 a.m. you work for your New York clients, and you go to sleep. You wake up at 5:30 or something, because your clients in Asia experience some issues. And it was pretty tough time.
Tough days, man.
But yeah, but it's fine. It's fine.
Thank
I
you.
hope again. I hope next year I will be able to, like, if you will do something in person in New York, I will be able to visit you in New York. Last time I was there, it was 1 year ago, and I traveled to New York, then we traveled to Florida. And after this visit to the United States, I finally understood that I should at least try to apply for EB1, because it's actually a big difference when you come to the States from Russia, because Russia was like well developed and a big country. And then we moved to Georgia when the war started in 2022. Georgia is a great piece of land that you should certainly visit, but it's very small. Like, it's only 3 million people here. When you come to New York from Georgia, this is like, wow, it's completely different city, and completely different experience. So yeah, I hope next year I will be able to visit you in person if you will do something.
That'd be awesome. You gotta keep us posted. Yeah, New York it grows on you. It can be the kind of place you look forward to leaving as well as visiting. It's nice. It's
Yeah.
nice to get away from it. But yeah, that would be a pretty big culture change. What's your time frame for like, if you get your visa, you're gonna move to the US? Is that your plan?
Yes. So if I will get my visa, so I hope that it will be approved in a couple of weeks. Then I will
cool.
have to wait. I will have to wait a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months for the interview in the embassy here in Tbilisi. And then I will wait until my older daughter will finish her second grade here in Georgia. So I plan to move next summer.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah, so you definitely
Yes.
have to keep us in mind and look us up. I guess if there's no more questions, I'm going to stop the recording here. And